So today we're going to be talking about info dumping. I know that I skipped last week, but this week and last week have been pretty chaotic for me, so that's been the main reason why I haven't posted. So I'm just going to post 2 videos today, and then you can check them out at your leisure. Alright, that being said, let's dive into info dumping. Alright, what is info dumping? Info dumping is when you have a ton of world building to do and a ton of information, like maybe it's a realistic fiction novel, but you have an entire family tree that is really important because if you don't go through it, you're going to be confused about the plot. Unfortunately, this loses readers really quick, especially if you do it right in the beginning. If you just go, and so knows, so knows, so and so knows, so and so knows, so and so, or this magic system works by blah 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 blah. Readers tend to get a headache reading that much download of information all instantaneously. So that is info dumping. It's basically when you just dump a whole bunch of world building, lore, etc. all at once, usually in the beginning. However, it can happen at any point throughout the story. The beginning tends to be the most common, but that doesn't mean that you that you won't be able to info dump at other points. Generally, you want to avoid info dumping, especially in the beginning, but in general, you want to avoid it altogether because that's when you start to lose readers and readers get bored. And like I said, they get a headache and they get stressed and they're like, this is too much for me to possibly read. Blah. That being said, what does info dumping look like / sound like? Now, I gave you a kind of basic idea. However, I'm going to give you a basic idea of how it sounds. Generally, info dumping is a lot more telling than showing. If you show something, then it tends to be feel a lot less like info dumping. Sorry, allergy season. My nose itches. As a result, it sounds a lot like and looks a lot more like she has brown hair, and because she has brown hair, she is told that she is less worthy in society because even though her mother had green hair, brown hair is considered a plain color because people with green hair have magical abilities and those with brown hair do not. And she always knew she'd be judged for her brown hair. Do you see the problem here? It's sounding very boring and very like, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact. It tends to read a lot like a textbook. It tends to feel a lot more like drudge work than reading actual fantasy. Whereas, if you're able to show it a lot more, it can feel a lot less info dumpy, even though it's still info dumping. For example, Brandon Sanderson, very classic example of doing info dumping elegantly. He does a whole boatload of world building. But during that boatload of world building, he takes it piece by piece and shows it to you throughout the story instead of just dumping it all on you from chapter 1, right? So that being said, one thing that you want to avoid is maiden butler dialogue. A lot of people say, hey, dialogue is a good way to get around info dumping. Only if one of the characters doesn't already know the information. Now, maiden butler dialogue was very popular in the 50s when they just were like, let's just jump into this movie and just plow right through. But that means that oftentimes you'd have dialogue like this. The master wants to make sure that his precious dog is washed by 7, as you know. Why are you saying as you know? If he already knows, why are you telling him? That's where the problem comes in with maiden butler dialogue. You're telling someone information they already know. Why would you tell someone information they already know? Now, if you're reminding them because they're like an amnesiac or they have memory troubles or things like that, that's different. However, if they already know and they're already doing it and it's already working, you don't have to tell them. It would be like going to your brother or sister and saying, hey, I'm going out for the evening, and then 5 minutes later you say, as you know, I'm going out for the evening. You already told them. Unless they didn't hear you the first time, you already told them. So that's the problem with maiden butler dialogue. If they already know what's going on with that problem, maybe don't reiterate it over and over and over and over again. Sorry, I was readjusting my screen. Alright, so that being said, you generally want to avoid maiden butler dialogue. How you can best avoid maiden butler dialogue, this particular type of info dumping, is by making sure that you have one of two things. You either have one person who has no idea what's going on. Example, Harry Potter. Hermione knows everything there is to know about magic, right? And Ron knows a little bit about magic. As a result, Ron and Hermione can both be like, Harry, you didn't know? And Harry's like, well, duh, I didn't get raised in the wizarding world like you two, so no, I don't know. And as a result, they're able to info dump that way. It feels a lot more natural because Harry doesn't know. So having it get explained to Harry is a very natural way of getting it done. It doesn't feel like maid and butler dialogue because Harry doesn't already know. If Harry had grown up in the wizarding world with both of his functional parents, why would they need to explain it to him? They wouldn't. The next thing you can do to fix the maid and butler dialogue, like I said, is make them forgetful and acknowledge that they're forgetful. Say something like, hey, I wasn't sure if you remembered, but I'm going out at 7 o'clock tonight. I know I told you 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. I realized that it could have been an issue telling you that early, and you might not have remembered. And then having them be like, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I totally forgot. Let me go grab the car. That helps it feel a lot more organic, a lot more natural, a lot like something someone would actually do, versus something that is stilted and awkward and people wouldn't actually do to function in dialogue. So, with info dumping, one way you can fix it is dialogue. However, make sure you keep those in mind. The next thing you can do to fix it / avoid it is make sure to string it out along the novel. Instead of having it all in one chapter, give a little bit in chapter 1, a little bit in chapter 2, and a little bit in chapter 3, and a little bit in chapter 4, and just kind of trail it out like breadcrumbs throughout the novel, instead of just one whole loaf of bread all at once. Have you ever noticed that about things like pie and things like that, where if you divide a pie up into 8 pieces, you might eat a half a pie and not even know it, because you just had 4 pieces. But if you told someone, eat a half a pie, they'd be like, no, that's insane, that's way too much pie. But if you divided it into 4 pieces and said you want 4 pieces of pie, that sounds a lot more reasonable. Some people might still say no, but it sounds more reasonable, right? It's just that kind of weird logic in our heads, and it's the same thing with info dumping. If you give it to us all at once, we panic. But if you trail it throughout the novel, you're still giving us a lot of info dumping, like with Brandon Sanderson, but you're doing it in a way that's elegant and a way that's palatable for your reader. All right. The last way that I would recommend fixing this up is to just use showing versus telling. So with showing versus telling, a lot of you probably already know what this is, but for those of you who don't know what this is, I'm going to give a couple examples just to try and help you learn what this is. If you don't know what this is, I'm going to say this is going to revolutionize not only your writing, but how you describe characters and your info dumping problems. It's going to help with both. So, an example for describing characters, just because it's a little easier than the info dumping, is the example of, she has brown hair, she has blue eyes, she has a slim nose, she is small of build. I'm bored. I don't care. It's a bunch of facts. Whereas if you say something like, she twisted her brown hair, her blue eyes darting from side to side nervously, her slouching her small frame further and further back, that's going to make it feel a lot more natural, a lot more showing instead of telling. And that's going to help you feel like it's more organic learning about all this, instead of feeling like it's kind of awkward and odd. Sorry, there was someone outside the room and I was trying to figure out if they wanted in or if they were talking to someone else. Alright. Meanwhile, showing versus telling with info dumping. For example, if you need to tell them all the magic rules, maybe start with something like, she felt a very peculiar presence when she picked up the stone. She knew that it was cursed due to the, she rubbed over the cursed markings, knowing what they meant, but fearing them nonetheless, or something like that. That helps us, instead of just saying, this stone is cursed, these markings mean X, Y, and Z. It sounds a lot less like a textbook, and again, reads a lot more intriguingly. It reads a lot more interestingly. Same thing with info dumping about world building physically. For example, setting. I could just say, the walls are gray. There is a thing hung behind me from the last Harry Potter day that looks kind of like the little bridge thingy. There's a TV in that corner. There's a whiteboard in that corner. There's a window behind me. That was very boring. I don't know about you, but if someone described a room that way, I'm falling asleep. whereas if someone were to describe it as the slate gray walls seemed to sigh as as opposed to their prior bright white color that had made the room a little bit more cheery. The drapery of the setting behind her gave the illusion of a fantasy universe that did not exist and yet was oh so clear on the canvas. A small TV perched in the corner and a whiteboard was tucked into the other corner. See all these verbs like tucked and perched and hung, and then comparing it to emotions and things like that. It helps make it so that it feels more tangible and more palatable and more interesting to read. If you associate objects and places with motion, it helps us feel more like we want to read it. So for example, if their blonde hair flutters in the wind, well, that tells us two things. One, they're blonde, and two, they're outside. That tells us so much more than if you said she is outside and she is blonde. That is so much more words to say the exact same thing. And it's far less appealing. So you're not only going to use less words when you don't info dump and you show instead of tell, but you're also going to find yourself feeling the writing more rather than just writing it. Facts. Pure history book. Alright. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson on info dumping. If you have any questions about how to avoid info dumping or what info dumping is or would like further examples, please comment down below. If you like this video, please also leave a nice little good old thumbs up or subscribe. I try to do videos every week. Sometimes I forget, but please know that I am always here via email as well. If you want to come for the Writers Club this month, it will be on the 26th. So not this Wednesday, so not this Thursday, but next Thursday. So next Thursday on the 26th. I hope to see you all there. It would be absolutely fantastic. We have so many great people, and we even have a Discord going. If you come in person, we can put you on the Discord chat server. If you don't know what Discord is, it is a chatting platform used for a lot of different purposes, but we're using it for writing, to bounce back and forth what we're doing. Hope to see you all there, and hope this helps. Thank you.